Riley took off his shirt. There were 3 scratches on his shoulder. There was even a wicked thing in the wound. When he touched it, it was very hard. While the doctor was away, he picked up a pair of tweezers, reaching back to take it out. He clenched his teeth and pulled it out. A strange liquid splashed out. What the hell? This was a human nail. His memory came back to yesterday. Samantha called him over. The two had sex with each other. She clawed his back. Something fell from Samantha's body. It was maggots. Riley panicked in an instant. He immediately went to the toilet and vomited.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
When Samantha saw it, she drove away. Suddenly her eyes darkened and she fainted. When she woke up again, she had become a zombie, completely unaware of her surroundings, biting everyone she saw on the street. Fortunately, the police came and shot her on the spot. This mysterious virus had spread throughout the country. Riley was terrified. He was scared of being infected by Samantha. He took off his clothes and looked at the wound. When he squeezed it, the thick yellow liquid flowed out of the wound. It was so disgusting. He picked up the disinfectant and washed the wound. The moment the wound was disinfected was like fire. The pain made him grind his teeth. Riley suddenly felt unwell. His nosebleed was surging. Accidentally, his blood dropped on the egg yolk pie. A female colleague came over. Thinking it was fresh jam, she scooped a spoonful into her mouth. Then she ate it clean. A pleased smile was on her lips. "I'm so hungry." On the other side, Riley ran to the bathroom. Just then, fresh blood splashed the whole wall. Then his blood flowed non-stop. He washed it with a cloth. The next morning, Riley woke up from his bed. It was like tumbling rivers in his stomach. He spat into the trash can. When he peed, the whole toilet was bloody red. He couldn't help panicking. His eyes became red. Blood flowed out of them. It was done. He had been infected. He suddenly felt something on him extremely itchy. Taking off his shirt, he found something wriggling under his skin. Moreover, his wound had festered and hotels grew on him. He couldn't just wait for his death. He pulled the hood of his sweater up, wearing sunglasses, covering himself. He drove to the doctor's house. The doctor was still on the bed with his girlfriend. Not waiting for him to complain, Riley took off his sunglasses. The doctor was frightened. He advised him to go to the hospital. Riley refused because all the people in isolation were dead. He didn't want to be next. After that, he left the doctor's house. He came to the grocery store and bought a pile of tools. Then he found a dark and damp toilet. He took off his shirt, pouring alcohol into his mouth. Then he picked up a knife and stabbed it straight into his arm. Enduring the sharp pain, he inserted his finger into the wound. He kept grasping and pulling, squeezing with both fingers. A maggot was squeezed out. He moved onto his shoulder and repeated the previous steps. Riley's aching veins burst.
Oh, fucking come out!
The maggot managed to stick its head out. He pulled it out with his teeth. After all efforts, finally, all of them were pulled out. Then he sewed the wound with a needle and thread. Riley hurried to find Harper. They just kissed a few days ago. There was a high chance she was also infected. To save themselves, they found the originator of the virus. They came to a motel to rest overnight. Harper suddenly felt uncomfortable in her eyes. She ran into the bathroom. Looking into the mirror, she took off her eyeball. She screamed. Riley hurried over, holding her with guilt. There was no time left. They had to start right away. According to the clue, Riley found the originator of the virus. This man was BJ, a dealer. They hadn't made it clear yet. The police broke in. They were soon subdued. Suddenly, Riley's ears were bleeding. Seeing that, the police took them to the hospital. Harper convulsed and vomited blood. After the doctor's efforts, she was still dead. The unwitting doctor pushed the body into cremate room. Just then, BJ came to the hospital pretending to be a doctor. He went straight to Riley. All this was his plan. BJ took off his shirt. He was strapped with bombs. This man had a serious antisocial personality. His purpose was to infect the whole country with the virus. Suddenly, the police came. BJ didn't panic at all. His goal had been achieved. He had already lived his dream. When the police didn't pay attention, BJ picked up the gun, shooting everyone present. No one survived. The dead were all American. He felt great. The female officer was seriously injured. BJ approached her slowly. In the critical moment, Riley rushed out of the ward with a pacemaker, knocking BJ down in an instant. Then they wrestled with each other. BJ reached for his gun. Riley didn't give him a chance to do so. BJ punched Riley in the stomach. Riley couldn't help but vomit a mouthful of blood on his face. It was disgusting. BJ took the opportunity to get the gun. He pulled the trigger. Riley was shot to death. BJ lied on the ground and shouted, "I succeeded." Now, there was only the female officer left. She was terrified. This man had no mercy. He raised his gun, ready to shoot her. At that time, Riley recovered. He bit BJ in the neck, tearing off a piece of meat. By this time, he had completely become a zombie. The female officer raised her gun and aimed it at him. Finally, she pulled the trigger. Because the president and the government were incompetent, the virus soon went out of control. The doctor came home. The woman who ate egg yolk pie was also infected. In her stomach, something was wiggling. This was the end of the film.